بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for being here. MashaAllah, it is I've been to the UK before, but not as a speaker, so this will be my first time coming to the UK to give any lectures or anything of that sort. And so far the impression hasn't been all that great. I was stranded at the airport. When I was getting my visa, I didn't know what address I was staying at, and then whenever she asked me what I was doing, I said I was giving some lectures at a university. I'm an instructor. She said, "Can you name any of the universities?" I could not name a single one of the universities that I'm speaking at this week. In fact, I have no idea where I am right now. I just know that you're all British. That's all I know. Yeah. And as far as the introduction is concerned, it's extremely awkward for a person to be listening to his introduction while he's standing there. So that's why I thank the brother, and I hope I ask him to forgive me publicly, inshallah ta'ala, if I made him feel awkward or if I made him feel any sense of haraj. But it's pretty awkward to have that. So anyway, this topic actually though is my favorite topic. And subhanAllah, more so when we talk about it in the United States. And the reason being is that in the United States, Muslims are even more of a minority than they are over here. Mashallah, I was impressed to see how many Muslims are here, and at the same time how many avenues there are for halal meat and things of that sort. So when you guys have the halal meat discussion, I guess it gets a lot easier over here than it does in the United States and things of that sort. We're more of a minority in the United States than you guys would be here. But at the same time, I think everyone would agree it's usually not easy to be Muslim, especially in the times of fitan, in the times of tribulations and things of that sort. And just to sort of start off, can anyone tell me what the meaning of the word fitna is? Anybody? Sisters, brothers? What do we use it to describe? Huh? Trial, tribulation, right? Whenever we talk about fitna, are we talking about something that's good or something that's bad? Something that's bad. But at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say in the Quran? Alif Lam Mim ahasiba an-nasu an yutraku an yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do people think that they would simply be able to say, I believe, and they would not be tested? So we look at it from that way. And there's various categories of fitna. So there's the fitna of things that are manifest in good things, in your wealth, in your families, and things of that sort, in your career. There's fitna that's obvious fitna, right? Which is, for example, a tragedy that takes place, or some kind of natural disaster, or whatever it is. That's also a form of fitna. But the essence of fitna is that fitna makes it very hard to recognize truth from falsehood, right? So whenever we describe the fitan, with these trials and tribulations, you have a hard time sorting out truth from falsehood. It becomes increasingly difficult to recognize truth from falsehood. But the meaning of the word fitna is actually incredible. SubhanAllah, it describes something that's incredible, because I think everyone would agree, had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not made us a minority in this country, or whatever country we are, and had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not put us in a situation where it's hard to be Muslim, as compared to being in a Muslim country where everybody else is doing the same thing, then would we be as strong in our faith as we are now? And the answer is usually no. And I can tell you, when I went to study overseas, when I went to the UAE first, mashallah, I thought I was going to land into a place where everyone was still on their camels, and everyone was gonna be dressed like they are in Al-Risala and stuff like that. And you're gonna have everyone with a big long beard, and subhanAllah, I landed in Dubai and I was like, whoa, what's all this about? Then the first time I went to the masjid, I noticed that no one spoke to each other after salat. And I was shocked, right? And salat al-Jum'ah was terrible. The khutbah was not just boring, the khutbah had absolutely no benefit in it except for khutbah al-Hajj, which was the introduction to the khutbah. It had no benefit in it. And you could pray in the same masjid there for 2 years, and people still would not know your name. Right? Now, to me that's odd, by the way. To me that's very odd. I don't know how communities work over here. I know that, mashallah, you're a much larger community than we are in the United States, relative to the population. But, that was odd to me. I was like, do you guys have a youth group in this masjid? You know, do you have an MSA, or as I learned here, it's an ISOC, you know, or USIC or something, whatever it was, as Lehan was explaining to me. You know, I was like, where's the MSA? Where's the student association? You know, where's the youth group in the masjid? What kind of halaqat do you have? I was absolutely stunned to see that Islam has just become part of culture over there. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِنَّ الْإِيمَانَ لَا يَخْلَقُ فِي جَوْفِ أَحَدِكُمْ كَمَا يَخْلَقُ الثَّوْبِ. That verily Iman becomes worn out inside one of you the way that a thobe does. Meaning what? If you buy a thobe when it first has its fresh colors, or you have a piece of cloth that has its, you know, it's bright red, or it has its dark blue, and you keep putting it in the washer and dryer, then what happens afterwards? The color starts fading away, right? So over there, what you would find in a country where Muslims are in the majority, Islam has become part of the culture. The good thing is that we don't have to worry about our kids going too far away, right? They're not going to mess up as bad as they would in a Western society. The bad thing is that if those same people get exposed to a non-Muslim society, or a society where there is quote-unquote freedom, right? What's going to happen? It's like, you know, it's like putting a child in a candy shop for the first time. SubhanAllah, if you take a flight, you know, from Saudi Arabia, for example, sometimes from Hajj, you'll be on a flight, or from Umrah or something like that. If you're coming from Saudi, and you're like, what's going on here? Everyone's all of a sudden, people are going into the bathroom, and it's like a Superman booth or something like that. They walk in one way and they come out completely dressed in another way. You know, the Lecutre and stuff would go off, and it'll become like the guy would slick his hair up like this much. It's like, everyone is changing. Everyone's like really excited to get to the West so I could do the things I've always wanted to do, the things I've always seen in the movies. Right? So the fact of the matter is that the goal was not achieved. The maqsad, the goal, the objective of Islam and Iman was really not achieved. Right? For those people. Why? It's culture. I pray because I have to pray. When I'm at a wedding, and by the way, in the Middle East, for example, you'll notice during a wedding, most of the time people will not pray. Right? Everyone else is not praying. I'm not going to pray either. Everyone else just does their prayers later on. I'll just do my prayers later on too. Everyone else dresses this way. I'll dress this way too. Right? Everyone else says this before they eat. I'll just say that before I eat too. But at the end, but what you see happening over there is because there was not a tolerance built, right, towards the fitan. As soon as those people are tested with something small, they can't hold their ground anymore. Right? So I would say, you know, subhanAllah, we're actually at an advantage living in a non-Muslim country. We really are. Because it gives us a chance to identify, to build our own identity, to recognize our Iman for what it is, to recognize the gift of an Iman, and to build upon it. Right? Because over there, yes, you probably would have a lesser chance of falling into certain sins. But, is that the goal? Is that the goal? And you look at that hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we come to the meaning of the word fitna, and this is what I was going to actually come to. In the Arabic language, fitna is the process of making precious metals. How do you make precious metals? Sisters, you should know this. How do you make precious metals? How do you make precious metals? What do you do? What do you do? You burn that metal, and what happens? It melts away what? It melts away the impurities. SubhanAllah. This is what fitna is in the Arabic language. This is what the Arabs used to describe fitan as. Right? So fitna would be towards precious metal. You burn that metal so that the impurities melt away. So in essence, fitna on a societal level, it separates the observers from the players. Right? It identifies those people who can really hold their ground. Why? Because yes, it's very easy to be Muslim in a Muslim country, but when you're in a non-Muslim society, how well do you hold your ground? Right? Now, what does ikhlas mean? Sincerity. What is the meaning, the linguistic meaning of al-ikhlas? Al-khulasa في اللغة العربية is purity. Subhanallah. The meaning of the word ikhlas is purity. So the only way you can achieve ikhlas is truly going through fitna. Subhanallah. If you succeed in going through that fitna, then you will have ikhlas. You will have a sense of sincerity and purity. And that's why, subhanallah, whenever... How many of you have Muslim relatives in Muslim countries? Some relatives in Muslim countries? Raise your hands. Almost all of you. Right? And whenever you go over there, sometimes people meet you and they're shocked that you know your deen. They're shocked that you pray, and you find, and they'll be shocked that you're actually practicing more than they are over there. And they're like, what's going on here? We thought you guys don't even know how to pray. Right? When I first went to the United Arab Emirates, right, and I was the American kid, and you can imagine how much fun everyone had with me. I was, and subhanAllah, I'm in these different halaqat, and people would come up to me and be like, you're American, right? Yeah. Like, here, let me teach you how to pray. Do you know Qul Huwallahu Ahad? They're shocked. It's like, whoa. This kid knows his deen, and he lived in the States, right? You have youth groups over there? And then whenever people ask me when I go overseas, how many, and I know this is, at least in the States, if you're from a Daisy or an Arab family, if you're not a doctor, you are an utter failure in life. You have totally dropped the ball, right? What do you do, Omar? Oh, I'm an imam. God, really? Right? Because when they think of imam, what do they think of? They think of the guy that rides his bike, teaching kids Quran and stuff like that, who couldn't make it in anything else in life. So he became an imam. Is that enough to support your family? Yeah, that's enough to support. What do? I give lectures, I teach on. Is that enough? When are you going to get a real job? What's your real job? Right? It's like, they cannot understand the concept of Islam being established in a non-Muslim country through building identity. I'm not talking about the imam. I'm saying that you have a forced emphasis on building your deen. How many, do you really think a lecture like this would take place in a Muslim country? Right? About how to protect yourself from fitan and things of that sort? No, because everyone, it's sort of like it's buried, they're all taboos. It's sort of like it's buried away. Everyone knows certain things are going on, but they're not so extreme, because at the end of the day, the superficiality of the culture is going to catch you. That net is going to catch you at the end of the day. Right? So you won't mess up too bad, like you would in a non-Muslim country. But in order to truly achieve a sense of ikhlas, a sense of sincerity, you have to go through that test. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you about how you were in circumstances and in environments that were not necessarily friendly towards the development of your iman. And I'll give you an example. And this is something, subhanAllah, that blows me away every time I think about this. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us about the 7 people on the Day of Judgment that are shaded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a day when there is no shade except for the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously you've got, Hakim Adil, this just ruler. That's a huge thing to achieve. When you have that much power and you still are able to maintain a sense of justice, and you still rule with righteousness, right? Huge, right? In that same group of people, you have one guy, and the only thing that he achieved, رَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ إِمْرَأَ ذَاتَ حَسَبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. A guy that, a person that was called by a woman of beauty and status, and of course this also could apply to a sister, meaning they were tempted by a relationship, and there was beauty, meaning there was a sense of attraction, and there was status, and the status meaning that they could cover up the sin, right? They could cover up the sin, and he said, إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. Or she said, إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. I'm afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can't do this because I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That one statement, that one action, that one stand at that moment is enough to join that person with that elite company. SubhanAllah, with a person that gave massive amounts of charity and things of that sort. Right? With a person who grew up in the masjid. With his heart attached to the masjid. Why? I took a stand when it was inconvenient to take a stand. I went through the process of fitna, and I achieved a sense of ikhlas in that way. And we've kind of built this hypocrisy in ourselves, which is actually very common in dealing with any religious group, which is that the goal is to be religious inside the masjid. The goal is to dress and act a certain way inside the masjid. And there are certain things that are off limits in the masjid, but once I come out of the masjid, everything is freedom. I can do whatever I want at that point. Right? It's, the goal is to be religious when I'm amongst Muslims. The goal is to dress a certain way when I'm amongst Muslims. The goal is to act a certain way when I'm amongst Muslims. But the problem is that all of those standards get thrown out of the window once we leave the masjid. So there's certain things that you cannot do in the masjid. How dare you walk into a masjid that way? And the masjid, which is in essence supposed to be a clinic for sick people, has turned into what we want to be, what we want to fulfill all of our cultural pretenses, our false cultural pretenses. Everything is off limits here. We want to pretend that no problems exist in the masjid. We want to pretend that we're all ideal people, mashallah. But once we come out of the masjid, everything changes. Right? Now I'll give you this example, and this is a cultural hypocrisy that we'll see, for example. The whole concept of sisters in the masjid. This was something, this is something in some countries that, I think you all know this, that women aren't even allowed in the masjid. Right? So subhanAllah, in my masjid, for example, we once had a sister that drove for 3 hours from a small town to ask questions about Islam. She was a non-Muslim. She wasn't wearing hijab. She walked to the front door, and someone walked out and said, if you're going to dress like that, go home. Right? That same person owns a business, owns a convenience store. And I've seen that same person in the convenience store, and mashallah, hi Julie, how are you? How is your day today? You look so pretty and charming today. How is it? It's like, so in the masjid, the sister became an alien. Outside of the masjid, she's worth nothing. Subhanallah. So it's a cultural hypocrisy, right? That the goal is to be religious in religious environments, to basically put a pretty face to an ugly relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put on a nice face, right? And that's the problem. That in and of it's, that right there is the core of the problem, right? And we basically, again, that's like saying that the goal of rehab is to be good in rehab, to be sober in rehab. It's easy to be sober in rehab. The real test of whether your rehab was successful is when you come out of rehab. And that doesn't mean that you go looking for tough situations, right? That doesn't mean if you had previous problems with alcohol, you go play pool in a bar. Or that just means that, subhanAllah, what's going to show whether or not the effect of the salah was truly there, whether or not the effect of your ibadat was truly there, whether or not the effect of that good environment of deen. Yes, the environment of deen is important, these halaqat are important, but what's going to determine the success of this halaqa and other gatherings is how you act once you leave, where your eyes wander once you open that door, right? That's going to determine the success of this program and of a deen environment. And again, subhanAllah, we look at Ramadan. Is the goal in Ramadan to be religious inside of Ramadan, or is the goal of Ramadan كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ? The goal of Ramadan, all of that we have, is so that we can gain a sense of taqwa, of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that causes us to be in awe of Him. Right? As one of the scholars said, فَيَا تَرَى مَا الْفَائِدَةُ بِعِبَادَةِ شَهْرٍ كَامِلًا إِنْ أَتْبَعْتَهَا بِعَوْدَةٍ إِلَى السُّلُوكِ شَاءً. What's the point of an entire month of ibadah if you follow it up with its complete opposite in terms of behavior and action? What's the point? Right? It's like as soon as Ramadan is... You guys have Eid Milans here, right? Eid parties and stuff like that? You guys have Eid parties? Yeah. And it's like, subhanAllah, it's like they should seriously hang a banner that says, welcome back Shaitan. Like we missed you. Because we're going to do everything in our Eid party that we were supposed to learn to stop in Ramadan. Subhanallah. We were supposed to learn as-siyam an al-ma'asi, to restrain ourselves from bad deeds, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even allows us to, or even orders us to restrain ourselves from halal things, to learn how to restrain from haram things. Right? As soon as Eid day comes, it's like everything is out the window. Because the goal of Ramadan was to do like Quran khani hopping and stuff like that, Quran khatam hopping, and catch every Quran khatam, to make sure I catch this many rak'at of tarawih, to make sure I do this many khatams of Quran, to make sure I did this many days of fasting, to make sure that I did, I fulfilled this many rituals and this many rituals and that. It's like, and then when the whole point of it is lost. Because the goal of rehab was to be sober outside of rehab, not inside of rehab. And subhanAllah, this is where the hadith comes. From the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the authentic hadith narrated by Abu Tha'laba radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, which I'm guessing the topic of this program was hot coals. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّ مِنْ وَرَائِكُمْ أَيَّامَ الصَّبْرِ, that verily behind you, coming after you, are days of patience. Who is the Prophet ﷺ talking to? The companions of the Messenger ﷺ. As if they didn't have to have patience, they were tortured for their deen. They were put through all kinds of tests and trials. And Rasulullah ﷺ is saying that after you, behind you are times that will require great patience. الصبر فيه, that having patience in that day, مثل قبض على الجمر, will be like holding on to a burning piece of coal. Subhanallah. Now here's the beauty of this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the reward of that, he said for the one who has patience in that time, he would have the ajr of 50 people who do the same action. Meaning what? His good deeds would be multiplied by 50. By 50. So for example, you know, a sister who's wearing hijab, and brothers, we tend to degrade this and belittle this. You know, a sister who's wearing hijab here, compared to a sister who's wearing hijab overseas, or in the time of the Sahaba, is a totally different time. The reward is more, inshaAllah ta'ala. Right? Or a person praying whenever it's awkward to pray out in public and things of that sort. You know, we have a defeated mentality sometimes. You know, that we should be ashamed from the truth. We should be ashamed from the truth. We need to hide when we pray. We need to do this. We need to do that. And I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, we have this issue. Right? Everyone will just combine prayers later on and stuff like that. Why? I didn't want to pray out in public. I didn't want people to see me praying. You know, we need to hide. And this defeated mentality is one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. You know, that the Prophet ﷺ mentions to us, right? That two people would be committing zina in the middle of the street. Middle of the street. And the best amongst the people at that time would go to that person and say, would go to those people and say what? Not that what you're doing is wrong. Not that this is immoral and this is not what we should have in our society, but could you please move to the side of the road? Defeated mentality. Right? So to have patience in these days and to hold on to your deen, a person would receive the reward of 50. Now the Sahaba say to the Prophet ﷺ, not objecting, but at the same time, you know, subhanallah, what do you mean by 50 people? So they said, Ya Rasulullah, ajru khamsina minhum, they would have the reward of 50 of them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, ajru khamsina minkum, the reward of 50 of you. Subhanallah. To do a good deed in these days, to be patient. And notice, the Prophet ﷺ specified and emphasized patience with your deen and holding on to your deen in a time of fitna would give you the reward of 50 of the companions who would do the same action. Subhanallah. That is amazing. Because that shows what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge everyone on the Day of Judgment, not just according to the deeds, but according to the circumstances. Can you imagine how bad it would be if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised us on the Day of Judgment with the Sahaba, and we would all be judged according as if we all had the same circumstances? You know, as someone who lived under Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's khilafah, we would be in a lot of trouble, right? But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is showing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you according to circumstances. When you take a stand with your deen, and you do something that requires great patience, at a time when all of the circumstances are unfriendly to the development of that deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you the reward of 50 of the Sahaba. What more could you want than that? What more could you want than that? Right? I need to start thinking as a Muslim, as a believer. You know, how strong, you know, what is my true belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And sometimes the true expression of love is not what you do, but it's how you maintain consistency. And I'll give you an example. When the Prophet ﷺ says, as Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The most beloved of actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the small ones. Those small deeds, you know, are the consistent ones, even if they're small. Those consistent deeds, right? And I'll give you an example. Let's say that a man, you know, or a man and a woman are married. So you've got husband and wife express all kinds of love to each other behind closed doors. The husband is extremely nice to the wife behind closed doors. You know, he treats her with a sense of dignity and things of that sort. But whenever he's with his friends, if his wife calls, he's going to purposely roughen up his voice and talk down to her in a demeaning way. Why? To show his friends that I'm still the man in the house. Right? And I would say that I still wear the pants in the house, but I realize that in the UK, pants means something different than it means in the US. In the US, pants, trousers in the US, right? But subhanAllah, I'm still the man in the house. So you've all of a sudden changed your behavior, right? Or, there's always this complaint, as an imam, the main thing that I dealt with was mother-in-laws, right? so it's like, subhanAllah, some of the sisters would complain. It's like, my husband is so nice to me and he's such a good husband, but as soon as his mom comes into the picture, all of a sudden, he turns his back on me, he doesn't listen to me anymore, he doesn't talk to me with any form of courtesy, things of that sort. Meaning what? His love, all of the good deeds that he actually did whenever they were alone just went out the window. Right? It was all thrown out the window. I need you to prove your love to me. Right? And unfortunately sometimes, let's be balanced, sometimes the sisters do want their husbands to do unreasonable things with their moms. But the point that I'm trying to make is, that's when you prove your faith. That's when you prove your love to a person. And that's why fitna and going through the process of fitna harbors ikhlas, pure and sincere love of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the goal is not just to build and to have an environment where everything can be ideal. Because the fact of the matter is that there will be times that you will have to be tested with your faith. But the goal is to have an environment that you go back to, a halaqa or a friendship or a companionship or a masjid that you go back to that recharges you. Right? That gives you enough iman so that you can deal with the stuff outside. Right? Not to always have that environment. Because if you become dependent on your environment, then by your nature you are a weak person. And in this society and in these times, only the strong survive. And that's why Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and I'll end with this inshallah ta'ala, just talking about this statement, then we'll go to questions and answers. We can talk inshallah ta'ala, just have some discussions. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, has a very interesting background. His father, Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was dying, he said something very profound. He said that my life has been divided into 3 stages. I've had 3 phases in my life. The first stage, when I was a kafir and I was fighting against the Prophet ﷺ, when I was an agent of falsehood. He was the one trying to get the Muslims oppressed. In fact, he was one of the reasons for the oppression of the Muslims. Right? He was the one that was trying to sweet talk in Najashi in Abyssinia to even oppress the Muslims there. Right? So he says, there was a time in my life when I was fighting against Islam. I was fighting against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, had I died then I know for sure I would have been in hell. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have took me then, I know it would have been the end. I would have had no hope whatsoever. He says, the second portion of my life was when I believed in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I was with him, and I was in his companionship, and I was under his command. And he said, had I died when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive and I was around him, then I know I would have made it to Jannah. And he said, now I'm in the third part and I really don't know. SubhanAllah, I'm in a stage of uncertainty. So I'm hoping for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah, why? Imagine being in a halaqa with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the man standing in front of you is the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, who receives divine revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has the most amazing character ever known to mankind. It would be easy to be good in front of him, and to be with him, and to be around him. Right? But it's whenever you don't have that environment anymore. Imagine if the Prophet ﷺ was on Facebook and he sent you a friend request today. What would you do to your Facebook before you accepted that friend request? Right? Because I stepped away from that. And now I need to worry. Right? So all of a sudden the thought of the Prophet ﷺ being with me, or being able to see those things, is enough to get me, rattled up a little bit. But here's the thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching you the whole time. And Allah is greater than the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And He was seeing your Facebook, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was seeing the way that we act when we're in the masjid, outside of the masjid, in the halaqa, outside of the halaqa, in the classroom, outside of the class. Allah was watching us the whole time. But it's easier when you see something tangible, right? When there's something tangible right in front of you. And that's why the beauty of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. First description of the believers, you don't have to see it to believe it. You believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you worship Him with ihsan as if you can see Him. And once you realize that you can't see Him, then you know that He can see you. Right? So Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, now let's get back to that family. Amr ibn al-As divided his life into those three stages. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu was born into Islam. And he was one of the Abadila, right? The Abadila are the scholars of the Sahaba. Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. And some of the scholars also mentioned Abdullah ibn Zubayr. These are the scholars of the Sahaba, young people that grew up in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that had such a grasp on this deen, and the deen was preserved in their hearts and through their minds. SubhanAllah, they taught, they spread the deen. The Abadila. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As though was overly enthusiastic and zealous when he was very young. So his father actually would complain to the Prophet ﷺ about him. Right? That he was trying to maintain a level of output that was not maintainable. Which is what? He would pray qiyam all night long. And he would fast every single day of the week. And his father knew, and he would finish the recitation of the Quran every day. And his father and the people around him knew, you cannot maintain this level. There is no way to maintain this level, so take it down a notch. Right? So when the Prophet ﷺ asked Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, how much do you fast? He fasts every day. The Prophet ﷺ told him, fast Mondays and Thursdays. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I can do more. He said, fine, the best of siyam is the siyam of Dawood alayhi salam. Fast one day, break it the next day. Fast the next day, break it the next day. You can fast the fast of Dawood alayhi salam. How much do you pray? At night, he prays the entire night. The Prophet ﷺ told him the best qiyam, you sleep the first 2/3 of the night, wake up the last third, and then sleep the last 1/6. Right? Take a small little nap after you wake up in the last third of the night to recharge yourself. That's the best qiyam. That's the, Ya Rasulullah, I can do more. You do that much. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ even ordered him with qira'at al-Qur'an. Right? That you shouldn't finish the Qur'an more than once within a period of 3 days. Take 3 days, spread it out over 3 days. Now some Sahaba, Prophet ﷺ allowed them to do more than that. Why? Because they could maintain that output. But the Prophet ﷺ was saying to Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, look, you're young, you're overly enthusiastic, you're overly zealous right now, but you will not be able to maintain this level of output. Right now, you're in this environment. Your father's Amr ibn al-As, the Prophet ﷺ is amongst you, he's raising you, right? And then the Prophet ﷺ left him with a very powerful advice. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, Ya Abdullah, la takun karajulun kana yaqumu al-layl fatarak. Don't be a man who people will say about him, or it would be said about him, that he used to pray qiyam al-layl, then he stopped. Because he wasn't able to maintain that level. So Abdullah, he used to say, I wish I would have taken the advice of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Then he says, radiyallahu anhu, and this is what I'm getting to. The idea that deen is whenever time, the entire setting is favorable. Time and place are favorable to deeni development. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As says, لَخَيْرٌ أَعْمَلُهُ الْيَوْمِ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِن مِثْلَيْهِ مَعْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, for me to do a good deed now is twice as beloved to me as a good deed that I would do when the Prophet ﷺ was alive. You imagine, right? What's sweeter than praying with the Prophet ﷺ? What's sweeter than giving sadaqah when the Prophet ﷺ is the fundraiser? Right? What is sweeter than that? But he's saying it's twice as beloved to me to do it after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Why? He says, لِأَنَّا كُنَّا مَعَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يَهِمُنَا الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا تَهِمُنَا الدُّنْيَا. So when we were with the Prophet ﷺ, the only thing we thought about was akhirah, was the hereafter. We had absolutely no care for this world. And he says, وَإِنَّا الْيَوْمِ, I said, as for today, الْيَوْمِ قَدْ مَالَتْ بِنَا الدُّنْيَا. So dunya has overwhelmed us. So he said, if I can bring myself to still do those same deeds now, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, it's twice as beloved to me. So think about that the next time. Embrace this difficulty and turn it into an opportunity. Embrace this difficulty and turn it into an opportunity. That it's more difficult to do certain things now, to fulfill the fara'id of my deen and to fulfill the mandatory things, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward me more, inshaAllah ta'ala. And I have to be strong. And I'll end with one thing, and I said I would end with the last thing. But anyone who knows me, you'll learn this about me. Every time I say it's my last point, it's never really my last point. Because I always remember something else. You ever seen the people that can walk on like spikes and stuff like that, and on fire, and they can lay down on a bed of nails and stuff like that? What makes them able to do that? Huh? Practice and what else? Practice and technique. Strength has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's all about practice and technique. Right? And Rasulullah ﷺ said that there would come a time when holding on to your faith would be like holding on to a burning coal. Right? We don't look for fitna. We don't look for trouble. We don't look for environments that are unfavorable to us. Right? But we try to build the environment that will allow us to develop most, and that will allow our iman to flourish most, so that we can handle those moments. But at the end of the day, we understand it's not going to be my strength that's going to make me able to overcome this. Who's it going to be from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the technique is saying La ilaha illallah. The technique is understanding that huda lies, that guidance lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I need to consistently ask Allah to strengthen me. Right? For strength. You don't find in the Salihin, and some of the scholars, they said that you should not ask for patience. It's not haram to ask for patience. But when do you see in the dua of the Prophet ﷺ or in the dua of the Salihin, oh Allah, grant me sabr? You don't see that. You see, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, help me, support me, guide me to remember you, to thank you, with the best of dhikr, with the best of gratitude, and with the best of ibadat, to perfect my acts of worship. So you understand it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يُثَبِّتُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِالْقَوْلِ الثَّابِتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the believers firm with al-qawl al-thabit, with the firm word, which is La ilaha illallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes them firm in this world and in the next. So understand that at the end of the day, I need to consistently ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be sincere in my asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help me overcome the environment which makes it harder, or the time that makes it harder for me to flourish in my iman. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if I said anything good, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to be from all of our good deeds. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if I said anything bad, that He forgives me for that. And if I said anything wrong, verily it is from the evil of myself and from the shaitan. I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His mention. Jazakumullahu khairan.